What does it take to build a community rooted brand that heals, uplifts, and activates? Well, today we're sitting down with Amanda Ebokosia, founder and CEO of the GEM Project. And she also happens to be the Civil and Human Rights Commissioner of Bloomfield Township. She takes us behind the scenes of her 15-year journey building an award winning nonprofit that serves youth of color through healing centered leadership. We talk all about her origin story, the courage to disrupt outdated systems, and how she weaves art, storytelling, and wellness into her movement. So, whether you're an entrepreneur, a mission driven leader, or just someone ready to turn a passion project into a purpose, this episode is for you. Amanda, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, I'm excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
My goodness, it's such an honor. And funny enough, I was going to ask you if you remember how we met because I do, and it was such a random small moment, and I'm so happy that we're still connected. And I
Yes.
remember it was in Staples well over like I want to say like 15 or 18 years ago, something like that, a very long time ago. And you were printing something at Staples for a project, and I was printing, I feel like it was maybe like headshots or something. At the time, I was really into performing arts. And we had one random conversation, and I remember feeling like this woman is doing something or about to do something big. Like that was your energy, and you just exude it. So I'm so happy to talk to you today.
Well, I'm so excited to be able to connect with you again. And it's so amazing that our worlds have collided once again. So I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. So I want to start from the beginning. What inspired, well, actually, let's back up. What is the GEM project and what inspired you to launch it? Was it a personal moment or a life experience that sparked it?
Yes, definitely. So the GEM Project exists today as a year-long paid fellowships for both high school students and college students to work on social justice issues that resonate with them across different disciplines from democracy, education, criminal justice, and health. Now, how it was sparked was when I was a college student. It was during my sophomore year, and I was going through a devastating situation at the time. I found out that my mother was diagnosed with invasive breast cancer. Although yeah, and she's a survivor, but at the time, as you can imagine, I was on campus in New Jersey. My family decided to uproot and leave the state, and so getting this information was over the phone while a student, and it was debilitating. And I always when I remember just thinking, like, I just wanna go home, I just don't in the way that my mother described it at the time, she lessened the blow, but it was actually more severe than what she led on to, which led
Mm.
into her having to have both of her breasts removed. But during that time, what sparked was just this curiosity that was rooted off of, like, informing myself about the issue at hand and how it affected young people. And I
Mm.
didn't necessarily wanna create an organization at the time, but what ended up happening was me, putting out a call across the country for folks who may have, been affected by breast cancer in some way. Maybe they had a loved one who was affected by it, and then just wanting to hear what their stories were like, and then also if they would take a chance on me as a college student and come over and convene at a studio location in New York City at the time to be photographed by some photographers and to hold place cards about that issue. And so what ended up happening, these photos became these large size displays and started to circulate kind of like a traveling exhibit. And the traveling exhibit first started off at NJIT, and being, a college student and just kind of just wanting to just hear what the pulse was like without being in the mix of the display, I overheard conversations, a lot of different types of conversations that's continued to stay with me, but the one that sparked the idea of maybe I'm onto something and creating something for by youth and in a way that sparked them to wanting to learn more about a particular issue was when I heard 2 male students approach a particular photograph that had displayed a male, young man holding a place card that had a fact about breast cancer happening to men. And it sparked this dialogue between the students and one student said to his friend, like, "Oh, this can happen to us." And then his friend was like, "What do you mean? Do you not have breasts?" He was like, "You know what? Imma look into this." Alright? And so that was to me just like the chip or the little spark. Like, "Hmm." And that's how our motto came to be, "Captivate to educate." So we don't necessarily have to it's like kind of like creating the environment where young people can rise to the occasion without having to force information to them, without giving, like, traditional literature and of that nature, and I ultimately started to springboard different types of initiatives and projects over the years from that moment, but it has gone through so many iterations since then, and now it's a fellowship for high school and college students.
It's amazing. Wow. It's such an instrument for healing and for education and in a really cool and creative way because as we know, young folks, they don't always have the longest attention span. And I mean not neither do adults really, but it takes a certain way to approach them in order for them to really grasp and respect and understand, I feel like, deep work, especially things like health. What lessons have you learned about building a nonprofit? It sounds like you had another vision for it and then it morphed into something amazing. What kind of lessons do you have from the early years of building that?
Be honest with yourself and never skip on integrity. So, you don't have to know every detail of how to set something up completely before you take the first step.
Mhm.
But you do have to be honest with yourself and you have to do right by not just for yourself, but for the folks that you claim to wanting to support or work alongside. And I think that if you have that in place, everything else starts to find its way. And you have to want to when I say that you also have to like check in with yourself and be honest with yourself, I say that because everything stems from that.
Mhm.
You can put on a face for anyone else, but when it behind closed doors, you have to really face who you are because ultimately when you start something, as you know, it although it's not about you, but you are the gardener in a way. And
I
so
love
if
that.
there's certain things that are unresolved within you, it's gonna come out. It's just a matter of time. It's gonna come out in how you engage with people. It's gonna come out in the type of people you bring in as partners. So if you have unresolved issues, about why you're starting this, you have to really start to really check in with yourself. And it's something that like, deep reflection is a practice that I engage with every day. We've also implemented it in a way where our youth and our young adults and even our staff, they also engage in reflection. It's a part of work, it's not something extra. And so because it's important, because if you're not aware about how your actions affect you and other people, you're gonna unintentionally do harm over and over again. And that's something that we don't want.
Yes, you hit so many chords there. And one of the principles that I always really live by is like your inner child is your business partner because the things that, like you said, are unresolved with you, they come out. And so you really want to address it within yourself first before you serve and before you lead, really. And you're such an amazing leader. Have you ever had any fear of, like, visibility or leading, being an authority figure, anything like that?
That's interesting. That's an interesting thing to think about, if like fear in leading. Yeah, I would say, um, I'm not somebody necessarily that likes to put themselves out there as much. I kind of like to do the work and have the work come up, but slowly but surely, depending on the position that you hold, you have to
Hmm.
step in those spaces. And so ultimately you just gotta give it a shot. You gotta do the thing that scares you over and over again. And then before you know, you start to like it. Or you
Yes, I
feel
agree.
like, even if it's, like, for something as simple, like, maybe as, like, speaking and speaking in large audiences. You just gotta, put yourself in that practice
Mhm.
of putting yourself in that environment, because that it can be the thing that can be holding you back. Throw, like, paint against the wall, and you gotta keep throwing it until you see something that you like? That's the greatest injustice, is holding yourself back because you're trying to see if something is gonna be perfect. It's not. And
Exactly.
now ultimately, I think people assume that the polished, people sometimes see people of success and things seem like really polished, but they don't see how many times they threw paint against the wall, and to
Mhm.
see if they can get that right image, right? And so there's a lot of practice. And there's also a
Yes.
lot of, I think, spaces and circumstances that might come up along your journey that test you at can question you, um, whether you should proceed or continue to proceed, and it can provide doubt. For example, as a student, I was not necessarily like, "Oh, we're gonna create this organization, it's gonna be great." I just know it. Just curious, it's all about curiosity, and in that journey of curiosity, I had friends who had told me, like, "I wasn't gonna tell you," and I'm glad they didn't. Like, "I thought you was a little crazy. I ain't believe in you, but I was just just see where it go. Let's see, man is gonna do her thing. Let's see." But they thought that I was crazy, and then I had other people who had told me, upfront that they thought that I had other intentions, some weird
Mm.
intentions. And I had other people who wrote other student journalists who wrote a story, about me, like, "Beauty's in the eye of the beholder," and they questioned people across campus about, like, what if I was really, like,
All
really
that
it
energy. Like, what?
yeah.
Why?
And then it's funny, and but that person did since apologize as an adult, like, many years later, like, "Oh, I remember that article I wrote on campus about you." And I was like, "Yeah, but I didn't really think about it." At first, I didn't even think it was an insult, and then my roommate had to tell my "Girl, let me break this down to you."
That is hilarious.
Yeah, but ultimately, there's so many little pieces in that thread of journey that could have been broken, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, "Wait, do they really think that? Like, maybe I should stop.
Mhm.
Maybe I should just stop the curiosity and see what happens from it." Had I stopped, there would have been no fellowship.
Mhm.
Right? Had I stopped, I would not have known that other organizations, entities, and people would have been invested into this project monetary, and then I would have been able to hire people one day and
Mhm.
do this like full time. Had I stopped and had I caved into doubt. And ultimately, what I was just like to say is just kind of like what I now realize, at this big age, is kind of like people sometimes don't do things to hurt you. Is just that's just
Yeah.
what they see. That's what they see in their framework, right? So they
Yes.
are not someone that has ever taken a risk. They cannot speak from that place. And so
Right.
they're actually scared for you because they're scared because they're putting themselves in this situation. But if they're
Yeah.
not somebody that's has been able to take that risk or take that first step, they can't really speak authentically to it. Um,
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
I love the way you put that. I love the way you
Yeah,
put
you
that.
gotta
Yeah.
surround yourself with people who take risks, and
Mhm.
because then they
Mhm.
can also speak to their own experiences, although can be very different from your own. They can at least
Mhm.
speak to what they may be feeling. You're like, you might have a little bit of more weight because you're like, you know what I'm talking about, right? So that's the thing.
Yeah, I want to go back to self-reflection because I think it's so important and it really speaks to
Mhm.
the type of people you're saying surround yourself with. I think definitely risk takers and then also people who self-reflect as well. What kind of
Yeah.
self-reflection activities do you do and do you guys do in the fellowship?
Okay. Like for me, it's just so natural. I don't necessarily have like a particular technique. It's kind of like I go out for a walk or I have quiet time where it's like time that's just for me, right? And so, like, that time is me, and so I get to check in with myself, and I'm like, Amanda, what's going on? Like, how do you envision the day going?" Like
Mhm,
like, right
mhm.
now, because I think when the day is early enough, because 'cause I'm an early person, when the day is early enough, it is the most exciting moment of the day because the possibilities are endless. You haven't made a dent. You haven't made any
Mm,
mistakes. You haven't done anything yet. It could be whatever you believe, but and so you can think, I usually try to think through, like, what is my day like? What do I wanna feel? How do I envision showing up? How can I make how can I increase the probability of showing up in that way? You know what I mean?
intention. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Even though I was thinking about, "Oh, I had this amazing, interview with Tania." I'm like, I was like, "Okay, let me look at the question a little bit." Like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna have a nice conversation. It's gonna be great. We're gonna just vibe." And I think through all of those things, and I think about all my meetings, and I'm like, "How am I showing up? What is required of me? Is there certain things I can prep?" You know what I mean? Little
Mhm,
things like that. And now for the fellows, 'cause, sometimes intentional thinking time, even whether you're getting paid for intentional thinking time, and it's part of their process, even part of their stipends, it's part of their work time during the summer as well. Like, they just have, like, a prompt, like, how are you in this state of moment? Like, what's going on in your life? What are you excited about? How has your leadership grown? Or what are certain things that has surprised you that you were not aware of from the last time you wrote? You know what I mean?
mm,
And it's nice because they may or may well, they've been aware about when they have this time to speak and write, they see themselves growing.
mhm.
Like, for example, we might have one fellow who's maybe new from the program, and they might, "Oh, today I was really quiet, and I know that people noticed it," or like, "That's because I'm, like,
Mm,
nervous and I don't know what to say, and it seems like
mhm.
everybody else knows what's going on." And
Mm,
it allows us also, especially with our, let's say if that's a high school fellow, and maybe a college fellow might read that, and it might help them support that younger fellow, because then it's kinda like, "Oh, they weren't trying to check out. It was because they're really nervous." And so a lot of times how we present ourselves may not be in the same way that other people may view us.
yeah,
And so when we, like, reflect, that's where the real truth might come. And so I'm like, sometimes when we start, like, especially when we start our summer work, I'm telling, like, facilitators, they might you don't know what type of coworker you might get. And so this cohort might be like, a little bit more low key. And then they're like, "Oh, wait, we know why." They said why. But over time, and all those things get developed.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be any complicated activity for self-reflection. Sometimes, to your point, it's
Yeah,
just asking the question, right? Like, "How did you feel
yeah,
today?" And it
yeah.
just gives space and room to just reflect,
Mhm.
and it's so, so important. I love that, yeah.
Or how you want to feel.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's a reminder that you're in control. You can prepave and determine that energy
Yeah.
that you bring.
Yeah, or you can get close to it. Sometimes things happen in our lives where we're on that we can't control, just
Mhm.
how you fit, show up. But when you are intentional about how you wanna feel, you are able to increase the likelihood of feeling that way versus giving it all to the will go with the wind, fabulous. You're like, "No, we
That's
can't
right.
have this."
That's right. Yeah. Are there any myths or expectations about leadership that you had to unlearn in order to thrive in this position and with your organization?
Say yes and no. I mean, there's a l there could be 2 different, it kind of could be hypocritical to say, but I used to think that you had to present a certain way to be taken seriously, and that could be 50% truth, right? And I say that because if I was to think and I was speaking to a younger version of myself,
Mm,
I was to say that more of how people engage with you is more so about how you present in terms of your own confidence and personality. That is
mhm,
probably more than anything else in terms of, like,
mhm,
style and presentation. And I only
mhm,
say 50% because what I've also learned and what I'm also learning, it is important to present in a more professional visual, however you wanna take it,
mhm,
that is kind of like the truth. When it
mhm,
at least my lived truth when it comes to and it's sometimes it's not fair when it comes to raising money or when it comes to speaking
mm,
to certain funders. People like to say, "Oh, it doesn't matter." I'm like, "No, it does.
mm,
It does." But your confidence is like more than that
mhm.
because you're basically if you are not able to convince yourself, how are you able to convince anyone else?
Hmm, that
You
part.
know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't believe in it, how you expect me to believe in you? Like, if you don't believe in it, why would I give money to you? Like,
Yep.
you're not worth the investment, which is harsh to say, but that's what I think these conversations that people might have behind the closed doors or however they may see it.
Mhm,
People are guided by their own beliefs, and sometimes their beliefs has nothing to do with you. It's based off of their own world, and their world can be very small
mhm, mm,
and or it can be very large and understanding and they get it, but sometimes people don't get it. And
mhm.
so you always wanna think, give yourself the best shot in however you can do.
Were there any resources that helped you build the GEM project? Any resources that you can recommend for someone who's just starting the journey, early entrepreneur, building a nonprofit?
Yeah. It all depends. It all depends on your what present resources that you currently have. I know I speak to a lot of young people. Um, and there's, like, little guide points that I give them and resources, but, like, for example, like, for a young person who has nothing, what I would suggest is, like, connect with your local law school and,
Mm,
check in with the community clinic because a lot of times these 3L, or 2L, maybe law students, they get to give back to the community and they get to help
oh,
individuals get their 501(c)(3). And they could do so within very nominal, very it could be free or it's like back in the day for me, it was like 25 bucks. And as opposed to hundreds, you know what I'm
mhm,
saying,
mm,
of dollars. And what's great about that is they're often supervised by a senior attorney. And so
mhm,
there's someone that does the checks and balances to make sure everything is correct. The downside behind that is that you are, catering to someone's schedule school term schedule, so when there's breaks and long breaks, there's really no activity, and you have to wait for the following school year or the
mhm,
school term and all of that. So I would say connect with them, and then also, shadow. There's opportunities to shadow or even work at
yes.
another organization. I think that's also cool. I remember I did work for a number of organizations while I was building up my nonprofit, and that helped me it helped me vision, kind of like vision cast, kind of like what I wanted versus what I didn't want, and it also helped me understand their funding and how they got funding, and it also helped me understand the type of environment that everybody was working under and what I didn't want in terms of company culture. I was very into understanding how company culture was built back then. So I did a lot of reading. I read everything from HBR to the Muse and the career section. Entrepreneur, I would read. Inc. I would read about like literally they have sections called startup, sections called
Mm,
HR like,
mm,
issues, and I would just read and think through like, "Oh, I want this. I would like this. Oh, I don't want this if I," as I build, you know? The
Mhm.
other thing is the other thing I would also suggest is learning how to speak on your work, and I think you can do that by, entering a lot of these, like, pitch competitions, even though they're really
Mhm.
aimed for for-profit entities, but it allows you to think through, your mission, your vision, and how you will fund it, because you can't just rely on grants. Grants are like a third of it, and so it could be like you would need, like, you have a government, you have private foundations, you have individual to really start to think like, how can you diversify your funding? Unfortunately, with the current state of our world, a lot of organizations who do amazing work, some have been either over reliant on government funding for a number of reasons because of the nature of their work as well requires that, and
Mhm.
so you
Mm.
definitely wanna build in different ways because honestly, nonprofit is a still a business. It's still a
Mhm.
business, and I think people and unfortunate that's the way that it's named nonprofit, people feel like they don't get any money, which is
Right.
couldn't be furthest from the truth, and how are people employed? How do they have benefits? It's still a business, and if you don't think about the ways in which it can sustain itself, the business will fail. And if you're not thinking in business mindset, it's going to fail. It's gonna
Mm.
become more challenging, and that's how you get these I guess that's how you get, like, these kind of like the reputation of the industry because you're not it's not was not built in a way that was thinking of it as a business. Because ultimately it is. It's the public, it's the community. The community owns it, but at the same time, how are you sustaining it to operate? And so those are the questions I ask myself each day, and those are the questions I think about, especially with the current state of the world. And like, you could be good today, you could be good 6 months from now, but are you going to be good next year? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing to make sure
Yeah.
you're gonna still be here? And so that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 things that you said that really resonated with me. Shadow opportunities. I remember back in the day, especially in high school and in college, I was like the intern queen. Like, I would just go to any and every business that I thought I would want to do and just offer my volunteer services. Like, I would just be there, and I learned so
Yes,
much from it. Um And
yes,
even, in adulthood, maybe not so much volunteering because you need to still support yourself, but, if you have any type of value to give, just pouring value into it and also just being in that space and in that community, you'll learn a lot for sure.
yes.
And then also pitching yourself. I find that developing a good
Mhm,
pitch is really the thing that really gave me clarity on my own business. And sometimes I tweak it here and there, but really
mhm.
learning how to advocate and pitch for my business to find those opportunities, definitely.
Yes,
So I totally agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, and I think also just being a part of different cohorts or associations
Yes.
can be beneficial to you, and a lot of times people join these, like, wonderful associations and organizations and membership opportunities, which is great, and I think it's great, and the learning journey is wonderful, but the real value is the members of the cohort within the cohort.
Mhm.
Making sure that, you are after the program has ended, that you are taking time to reflect, to really truly understand what you got from it, and not
Mhm.
jumping to the next one so quickly, but then also finding who you want to connect with over time, because those are the people who are doing big, bold things. Those are the fellow risk takers, the ones that are not telling you, "Oh, I don't" I think you crazy in front of you. But, like,
Yeah.
the ones who are right there with you, they might be working in a different industry, but they know it. You know where you're headed. And so, continuously trying to find places to develop yourself is key.
So where can people find the GEM project and how can people apply for the fellowship?
Yeah, yes. Well, we're gonna be releasing our ship for this coming school year very soon. You can visit us on thegemproject.org. You can also visit us also on our Instagram and also Facebook and LinkedIn, The Gem Project.
Perfect. And last
Yeah.
question that I always love to ask, what does hustle mindfully mean to you?
Mhm. Hustle mindfully means to do action with intention.
Yes.
Do action with intention and repeat, and that comes with, leaning into discipline and not just relying on being motivated because
Mhm.
motivation is often at the whims of the environment. Discipline doesn't care whether it's hot, cold. You still show up. You show up in the
Mhm.
best way you can because granted we all are human. Give yourself grace. But, when you show up with purpose and intention every day, your results will compound. But if it's based off of like, "Oh, I don't feel like it," "The sun's too hot." You know what I mean? You're not gonna see the results that you could have received if you just went at it. Yeah. So, action with intention.
This was such an amazing chat. I look forward to maybe chatting again in the future. I love to just stay within community, and I'm so happy to be connected to amazing women like you. So thank you again.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation.
This is a good one.